The $1,000 emergency fund is a lie. Here's what you actually need. Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning. You're running a little late, you grab your keys, you walk out to your car, and it won't start. Just a clicking noise. Dead battery, maybe? Or maybe it's the alternator. You don't know yet. You call a tow truck, get it to the shop, and 2 hours later the mechanic calls you back. Yeah, it's the alternator. Parts and labor, you're looking at $1,400. And here's the thing. You did everything right. You read the advice. You followed the steps. You have your $1,000 emergency fund sitting right there in your savings account. You were responsible. And now you're $400 short of covering a completely ordinary car repair. And you haven't even thought about the Uber rides to work you're about to rack up for the next 3 days. That $1,000 didn't protect you. It just slowed down the damage. And the uncomfortable truth is, that advice you followed, it was never actually designed to protect you. It was designed to get you started. Someone just forgot to tell you that $1,000 is the starting line, not the finish line.
I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why people who do everything right still end up financially stuck. If that's the kind of honest, data-backed conversation you want more of, subscribe and hit the bell. New videos every week. No fluff, no sugarcoating. Now, before we get into the actual number you need, and I will give you a real number, not a vague range, let me ask you something. How many of your actual financial emergencies in the last 5 years cost less than $1,000? Think about it, because I think the answer is going to reframe everything that comes next. Section 1. The psychology of false security. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. The $1,000 emergency fund doesn't just fail to protect you financially, it actually makes your financial behavior worse. And the reason is psychological. When you hit a savings target, any target, your brain registers it as done, completed, safe. There's a concept in behavioral economics called the goal completion effect. Once we reach a milestone, our urgency to keep going drops dramatically. We relax. We feel like we've handled it. And that relaxed feeling, it quietly gives us permission to spend a little more freely everywhere else. So what happens when someone saves their $1,000? They stop treating savings as urgent. They upgrade their streaming subscriptions. They say yes to the weekend trip. They put off building further because the checkbox is checked. The $1,000 created a false ceiling, and the brain is very comfortable sitting right underneath it. There's also something called protection illusion. It's the gap between how safe you feel and how safe you actually are. And $1,000 in savings creates a massive protection illusion. You feel covered. You feel responsible. You tell yourself you're not like those people who have nothing saved. And that feeling, that identity of being someone who has an emergency fund, is actually more dangerous than having nothing in some ways. Because at zero, you know you're exposed. At $1,000, you think you're not. The $1,000 rule didn't give you financial security. It gave you financial comfort. Those are not the same thing. Section 2. The math of real emergencies. Let's just look at what emergencies actually cost. Not worst-case scenarios, average ones. The average car repair in the U.S. right now sits between $500 and $1,500, depending on the issue. A transmission repair, $1,800 to $3,400. An alternator, like we talked about, $400 to $1,000, just for parts, before labor. Medical emergencies. If you have insurance and you need an ER visit, your average out-of-pocket cost is somewhere between $1,000 and $3,000 after what insurance covers. That's with insurance, and that's assuming you hit your deductible. If you haven't hit your deductible yet that year, you could be looking at the full amount. Home repairs. A burst pipe, $1,000 to $4,000. HVAC failure in the middle of summer, $3,000 to $7,000 for a full replacement. Water heater goes out, $800 to $1,500. These aren't rare events. These are things that happen to ordinary people in ordinary homes every single year.
And then there's the one that $1,000 is completely powerless against: job loss. The average time to find new employment after a layoff in the current market is somewhere between 3 and 6 months. If your monthly expenses are $3,500, which is modest for most working professionals, that's $10,500 to $21,000 you need to cover the gap. Your $1,000 covers about 8 days of that. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most financial emergencies don't come alone. Your car breaks down the same month you have a medical bill. You lose your job right when the water heater decides to die. Emergencies cluster. They stack. And $1,000 against a stack of emergencies isn't a safety net. It's a speed bump. The $1,000 rule was popularized as baby step 1 in a specific debt payoff framework. It was designed as a temporary placeholder, something to stop you from going further into debt while you paid things off. It was never meant to be a standalone emergency fund for someone who was already out of debt and building wealth. That context got lost, and now millions of people are treating a temporary placeholder like a permanent solution.
So what's the real number? The standard advice you've probably heard is 3 to 6 months of expenses. And that's actually correct. It just gets applied wrong almost every time. Most people calculate 3 to 6 months of their income. Wrong. You don't need to replace your income during an emergency. You need to cover your expenses. Those are very different numbers for most people. Sit down and calculate your actual monthly survival number. Not your lifestyle number, your survival number. Rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, minimum debt payments, transportation. That's it. For most people in their late 20s and 30s, that number lands somewhere between $2,500 and $4,500 a month. Multiply that by 3 for your minimum target. Multiply by 6 for your full target. So at $3,000 monthly expenses, and I'm being conservative here, your minimum emergency fund is $9,000. Your full emergency fund is $18,000. That's not a number someone invented to make you feel bad. That's the math of what it actually costs to survive 3 to 6 months without income in the real world right now. Think about your own life for a second. What does your month actually cost? Run that number. Because once you do, $1,000 is going to look very different to you. Now, I want to introduce something called the tiered buffer system, because save $18,000 as a single goal is psychologically overwhelming for most people, and they just won't do it. Tier 1, $2,500. This is your immediate buffer. Covers most single incident emergencies. Car repairs, medical copays, appliance replacements. Get here first. Tier 2, 1 full month of expenses. This is your stability layer. You can lose your income and not panic for 30 days. That breathing room changes how you think and act. Tier 3, 3 months of expenses. You're now genuinely protected against most job loss scenarios and emergency clusters. This is the floor for real financial security. Tier 4, 6 months of expenses. Full optionality. We'll talk about what this actually unlocks in a minute. Each tier is its own milestone. Each one changes your financial psychology meaningfully. You're not trying to save $18,000. You're trying to hit $2,500 first, then the next tier, one at a time. Section 4, the opportunity nobody tells you about. Here's the part that almost nobody talks about when they explain emergency funds. And honestly, it's the most important part. 6 months of expenses saved is not just a safety net. It's leverage. When you have 6 months of runway, your entire relationship with your career changes. You can negotiate your salary without flinching because you can afford to walk away. You can take a calculated risk on a better opportunity, even if it means a short gap. You can turn down a toxic work environment instead of staying because you can't afford not to. You can say no to extra projects that don't serve you without the anxiety spiral. Money anxiety is one of the leading drivers of bad career decisions. People stay in jobs that underpay them, that disrespect them, that limit their growth, not because they want to,
but because the financial pressure of having no buffer makes any risk feel catastrophic.
A 6-month emergency fund doesn't just protect your finances, it protects your judgment. Studies consistently show that financial stress directly impairs cognitive function. Literally, when people are stressed about money, their ability to think long-term, evaluate risk accurately, and make strategic decisions drops measurably. The emergency fund isn't just money in an account, it's a cognitive upgrade. Warning: the mistakes people make with this. Before you go build your emergency fund, and I genuinely hope you do, there are 3 mistakes I see constantly that will quietly wreck the whole thing. Mistake 1: keeping it in your checking account. If your emergency fund lives in the same account as your daily spending money, it will get spent. Not in one dramatic moment. Slowly, invisibly, $40 here and $80 there, until you check and it's gone. Your emergency fund needs to live in a separate high-yield savings account. Physically separated. Mentally separated. Mistake 2: not accounting for inflation. If your emergency fund is sitting in a standard savings account earning 0.01% interest and inflation is running at 3 to 4%, your fund is losing purchasing power every single year. A high-yield savings account right now can get you somewhere between 4 and 5% APY. That's not an investment. It's just keeping pace. Use it. Mistake 3: investing your emergency fund. I see this constantly from people who've graduated past basic personal finance content and feel too sophisticated for a savings account. My emergency fund is in an index fund. It's still accessible. No, that money needs to be liquid and stable. The moment the market drops 30% is statistically correlated with the moments when people lose jobs and emergencies spike. The worst time to need your emergency fund is exactly when your investments are down. Keep them separate. Always. Here's the reframe I want you to leave with. The $1,000 emergency fund is not bad advice for someone who has nothing. It's a real first step, and it genuinely helps people stop the bleeding when they're deep in debt. But if you're past that point, if you're working, earning, trying to build something, treating $1,000 as your safety net is like wearing a seatbelt that only works at speeds under 15 miles per hour. It's better than nothing. But real life drives faster than that. Your number is 3 to 6 months of your actual expenses, not your income, your expenses. Start with $2,500, then 1 month, then 3, then 6. And when you hit 6 months, notice how differently you think. Notice how much clearer your decisions get. Notice how the financial anxiety that's been running quietly in the background finally starts to go quiet. That's not just money in an account. That's what financial security actually feels like. If this video shifted something for you, subscribe. I put out this kind of honest, data-backed financial content every week. And drop a comment below. I want to know where you currently are on the emergency fund tiers. Let's talk about it.